Slumber. Performed by Nadia Yasmin. Written by Aghosh Chowdhury. It started when I found myself lying on the cold railway tracks, seconds away from the whistling train. The bite of cold metal pierced my cheek as the gravel quivered around me. Above, the two blinking lights of the nearby power plant glowed red-hot amongst the vapor, like God's watchful, evil eye hovering in the clouds. The roaring light of the locomotive was the light at the end of the tunnel, but no matter what it looked like, the train wasn't a promised pathway to a glorious afterlife. It was death. I tried to get up, but my body refused to move. My fingers and my arms and my spine, everything gave up on me. My body wanted me to die, so I let it be. I closed my eyes, and when I opened them, I was back in bed. Sunshine poured through my windows, and my bed was cozy, a lover's lap. My body was my own again, and the birds outside chirped to celebrate that. But amongst those bird songs, a faint train horn rang outside. Then I knew that dreams don't leave the taste of dust on your tongue. Dreams don't blacken the soles of your feet. Dreams don't wilt the flowers on your nightgown. Dreams don't hurt after they end. My door was unlocked, and my muddy footprints stained the carpet. I have been sleepwalking. I rubbed my eyes, but there was no trace of sleep lingering on my eyelids. My breath was fresher than the morning. I was already wide awake. I switched on the coffee machine and sat down to think. I should be afraid, yet I am not. There is a curious apathy in regard to last night's incident. It bothers me that it is not bothering me as much as it should be bothering me. I was inches from death. I wonder what Mother would say about that if she were not dead herself. She was a strange woman. I grew up seeing her wander the house past midnight, dancing barefoot to music I could not hear, and staring through the doorways at things I could not see. Sometimes during the afternoons, just when I was lying down to take a warm siesta, I'd watch her through my window as she would head to the broken tool shed in our backyard. She would then lick the paint off the walls. Her tongue would roll out of her mouth and curl into a pink confetti spiral as she pressed her mouth against it. Mold, dust, and other corruptions did not stop her. She traced her tongue against the cracks and crevices in the bricked wall, trying to feel what was in between. Dandelion yellow was her favorite color to eat. She said it was the taste of honey and her own shimmering yellow hair. I think she died because of that. The doctors just said she became too tired to live. I don't remember much. I was young when she went away. But I am sure she would be worried for her daughter. She would lie next to me every time and make sure I stayed in bed. She used to do that when I had night terrors. Whenever I opened my eyes, she was already up, looking at me with a fond, glassy gaze, trailing a finger to get hair off my forehead. Those nights are hard to forget. They're all I have of her. And despite all of that, I still can't say with certainty what she'd say to me if I told her what happened to me. And so, I took the first sip of that coffee and swiveled it around my mouth like bitter, hot tar. That's how it tasted like. But that's how I have been liking it lately. It is curious to see how easily tastes change. Things that you have grown up liking, things that are used to you just as much as you are to them, suddenly stop agreeing with you. Maybe that's why I have so much trouble falling asleep nowadays. The nights have grown longer lately, and I never stop to notice. Suddenly, the sun was just a stranger in the sky, in a day that was seldom visible to me. The nights were all. I finished my drink to begin another day. Lately, amongst those flicks of calendar pages, incomprehensible class notes, and dating app swipes, not much had changed. Besides waking on railway tracks in the middle of the night, a change is a change. I must take it the way it comes. My dorm's corridor was already teeming with life. I heard the doors shutting and the whispering footsteps of my floor mates going to their classes. I wonder how it felt to have the motivation to do so. They did it anyway. So could I? And so, like the good girl mother raised, I dressed up and combed my hair till long black locks found their way to the bottom of my comb. For a moment, I was worried that I would run out of hair. Then I slung my backpack on my shoulders anyway and left the room for my classes. I have always felt like a ghost at college, and I know I've never been the only one to feel that way. You walk past stony-faced people with their elsewhere stares, or past those who are plugged into their phones, chatting animatedly to someone worthier than I, looking like madmen interacting with their delusions. Some part of you wants them to notice you. You, who is alone, who is sad, who is worried. You, who woke up yesterday night lying on railway tracks. You, who almost died. And after the day ends, the daily, boring, sluggish slag, you want that cute guy with that dark hair and the dimpled smile on the bus to notice you. To sit down and have a conversation after class ended. He could be your savior, couldn't he? So maybe you let him be one, for a few hours. It's not hard to do that. I remember riding on top of him, my hair sweaty, face contorted in ecstasy, contorted in bliss. And when we were done, he goes away to his own bed, in his own room, in his own building. Nobody stays here but me. The only remnant that's left of him is what dribbled down my legs and the pain between them. And once that's done with, I am on to the next one. Isn't that what college is all about? Finding the next person you can fuck? So you can brag to your friends that yes, I am valid, I am wanted, I am desired. My body count is high. Isn't yours? Aw, boo, how sad. And then, like a flick of a page, I am in one of my political science classes, sitting in a giant room with 100 unknown students, focusing on South Asian political theory of post-mid-century, each with a face as unwanted and blurry as mine. I remember the professor talking about the farmers' protest in India. With the final talks by the government failing, hundreds of thousands of farmers decided to sit on stretches of roads to conduct a hunger strike, the professor said. The violence displayed by the police in those critical moments, combined with the brutal suppression. Yes, Lewis? This pestering kid Lewis would always be quivering in his seat, shitting his pants, drooling on his shirt with another useless, obvious question dancing on his lips. But Professor, if the laws... That's when it happened. Not to drooling, shit his pants Lewis, but that cute, dark-haired guy with his dimpled smile sitting next to him. He stiffened up with a yelp that quieted the entire class. His neck violently jerked sideways, twisted and snapped by some invisible monster. With a dreadful pause, a moment of hush, we held our breaths. His body started levitating. We all saw it. Those soft, black, beautiful locks cascading down his gray face in slow, graceful, terrible motion. His dead face, with a silent scream stuck on it. His stiff figure rising, 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, until his neck was twisted enough to be completely backwards. His limbs spread eagle on the ceiling. His popping, bloodshot eyes locking with mine. Around me, people vaguely started screaming in my ear, screaming until I passed out. I woke up with a stretcher carrying his body out. They say it was a brain aneurysm. That's all. Nothing special. Nothing that could just end your life at any moment. Nothing you can do about it. Just like the fact that I passed out the moment his body started seizing and dreamt a nightmare I did not know I was entering. By university policy, having witnessed something so tragic meant that everyone in class passed the course automatically. I saw some gleeful faces at that. That's all what some lives lead up to. I can only hope to be that useful someday. At day's end, having sat through all of my classes with a glassy-eyed stare, I returned to my dorm with sharp rocks in my stomach. As the door closed behind me, I paused to hurl my tar coffee out. Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, until all I was doing was holding my little garbage can like a life jacket, dry heaving bile into it. I closed my eyes and thought about how it felt to be him, to have dissolved into nothingness, ashes and holy rivers, to have gone away for good. I remember those eyes, scared and desperate, locked with mine. The same eyes, scared and desperate, that hovered above my face when he was on top of me, with my legs wrapped around his hips. Sad eyes, black eyes, dead eyes. I wonder what Mother would say about that if she were not dead herself. There were once a time, many a times, when she sat me on her lap and told me stories. "Listen up and listen well, little one," she would say. "I once knew of a man, a friend from long ago, who saved 20 people from a burning building. 20 he saved, but there were 21 inside. There was a life he could not redeem, one soul he could not save, and that was the one that burned on the insides of his eyelids, etched like hieroglyphics in ancient tombs. He closed his eyes and saw, as vividly as if he never closed them, the melting face of a little girl, face melting like wax, her tender meat cooked with furniture spice and herbaceous rugs. And do you know what he told me, little one?" Little me from a billion years ago shook her head. "That man said, 'The little girl died, looking me in the eye, knowing she could not be saved.'" My door shook as someone pounded their fists against it. I dragged myself to open it and found myself facing those same eyes. Still sad, still black, but not so dead anymore. My tongue retracted in my mouth, a scared snake in its dry burrow. I stepped back as he stepped in. "I heard what happened," he said. "Are you okay?" "You?" I said, my lips quivering to form words. "You?" "Yeah, it's me, Jake. Remember? I saw you die." "You saw me what?" "In that classroom. We don't have any classes together. Are you sure you feel okay? Leave me alone." "I can't. Have you taken a look at yourself? You're all sweaty. Leave me alone." "But just go!" He jumped back with those pitiful eyes. like a dog you didn't give a piece of meat to. I decided to give him that. It's why he is here anyway. Wrapped in a sweaty tangle of limbs, his warm breathing body rose slowly against my bare back, a dull, pleasing throb in my groin, and a stingy aftermath on my ass cheeks, littered with a myriad of handprints that glowed a hot pink. His long, pale, skeleton-like finger traced my face, smooth and slow, occasionally plunging in my mouth, wiggling deep in my throat. His milky breath ruffles wispy hair strands from the back of my head, and he said, "Turn around. Look at me." I turned as my eyes found his, dark and sunken, like he is the one who hasn't been sleeping much. "Won't you talk to me?" he asked, lifting the hair off my face like a marriage veil. "Won't you tell me what happened? I can help." Men always think they can save you. How? How can you help? "I can listen." He just said that to buy time, till he can get hard again. "I can tell you what to do?" "Okay." He waited and played with my hair till I thought of a sad story I could tell him, something he'd want to hear, but not care much about in the long run. As I spilled out the fiction, I saw the expression on his face change. Concern, confusion, disbelief, apathy, boredom. I kept saying words and slowly closed my eyes, pretending to fall asleep. He leaned in, his soft lips brushing against the tip of my ear. "There's like so much pain in your eyes. It's hot," he murmurs, mouth puckered. But I stopped listening to him and turned away once again. His willowy arm wrapped me like a blanket and pulled me in closer. He grunted and moaned with each thrust. Meanwhile, I looked at a dark corner of my room, thinking about when he played with my hair. Those long fingers threading and weaving and knitting strands like sweaters for little girls. Something so entangled, it belonged inside my brain. But once upon a time, many a times, someone else used to do that to my hair, exactly the same way. I wonder what Mother would say about that if she were not dead herself. Sometimes, in the still of the night, little me would wake up to screaming. Whether it was because I was trapped in the inkiness of my dreams, or if dark intruders were murdering my mother, I knew not. In the hours prior, Mother would spend entire evenings clawing the earth with her bare hands, till her pretty fingers were bloody and her nails were dirty and broken. She never told me her reasons, but I would fall asleep watching her and wake up mysteriously tucked in bed, warm and safe. Fearful for her life, little me, the warrior, the fighter, the brave soul, would try to find her and leap out and tiptoe barefoot on the cold floor in the creaking house. Despite running into dead ends and infinite corridors and pushed away by strange people in hoods, I'd find her every time where I last saw her. She'd be standing in her backyard grave, waist deep in what gleamed like liquid dark chocolate in the full moon's light, curls of hot steam rising around her. She spoke in a language I did not speak, and a voice I knew not to be hers. She spoke, she chanted, and she sang. Once or twice, her voice was joined by others, each adding a layer to the siren song. And with that, A long shadow would sprout from around her, growing oh so terribly, looming larger and larger, covering the sky until its antlered head reared in an ugly, raspy shriek. An unearthly sound, ethereal, not from here, something that makes you pull your exposed leg, hovering over the edge of the bed, back inside the comfort of your blanket. That was when I would try to warn her, yell out a little warning. "Run, Ma! Run away!" But hissing whispers from the strangers in the house, the shadow people, would stop me. Their moldy hands would cover my mouth and shackle my wrists, puncturing my skin like broken tree branches, and drag me to bed. When they let me go, the screaming would be gone. Mother would appear in my doorway, sweaty but smiling. She'd tuck me back in and look at me with those kind eyes that hadn't seen sleep in a while. She'd always ask if I wanted to hear a story. She had so many of those. When he was done, he left without a word, slamming the door behind. I don't expect him to come back anytime soon. He needs time to settle in his new skin. In those stories, Mother would tell me about skin changers who would kill gruesomely and wear their prize's skin, acting just like them. A disguise so well equipped that not even friends or family or the beloved household dog would be able to tell the difference. When he died in the classroom that day, something inhumane replaced him. Something. The hair on the nape of my neck stood up. A coldness seeped in my skin as pretty fingers, broken, bloodied, and familiar, grazed my scalp, sliding down the length of my hair. I took a shuddering breath. Something that Mother had sent. Because of her arcane rituals and cryptic friends, she was well versed in that part of the world that is hard to see. She danced that dark boundary often, but the question was still as unanswerable as Mother herself. Why would she send something like that after me? My alarm went off, shrill and loud, its screaming echoing in my bland, empty room. I looked outside and saw that another day had begun, a pale blue dawn emanating from the horizon. All this time is falling forever till the end. It has been escaping my notice like rats in the wall. I stepped outside into these never-ending corridors, long and lonely, and with the same door cloned and pasted sporadically. Same door tags, same handwriting, just different names, each equally meaningless. Musty carpet that smelled like dried sweat and vinegar, and the flickering fluorescent white light with its unending hum. The longer I walked down them, the longer they seemed to stretch. A glacial treadmill, whose speed was dictated by that of my footsteps. At the end, the elevator lobby swallowed me whole in its vast emptiness. In that liminality, there is nothing but static, no change, no life, nothing but carpet and carpet and carpet forevermore. A purgatory for passers-by. The elevator dinged as it groaned and creaked up to my floor, like an old man dragging a bag of his own bones. Stepping in always feels like I am cozied up in my coffin. Any second, the elevator would give way and crash to the ground. Shatter me like a glass statue, collapse me into fine powder, and mix me with the snow. I pressed the button, and the elevator stopped a floor before what I intended. When the doors opened, there was nobody. Who are those invisible guests elevators always stop for? I arrived at the front desk, a nook in the hallway splashed with green Spartan helmets and cheesy slogans. There is a finality in the closed shutters of the service desk, a deathly hum in the vending machines, a foreboding in the corridors, and a taste of metal in the water fountains. All of these things will be here forever, they seem to say. You, only you will be gone from here, gone and forgotten and replaced. But who needed sleep? They say you spend a third of your life sleeping. How much time do you really have left? Wouldn't you want to stay up? Live every second until you seep into that sweet sleep forever? It was what everyone chattered around here. Some sort of sick glamorization of insomnia, so you were forced to spend more of your time and your body on vain, capitalistic pursuits. Let your body take a toll while it can take a toll. How much time do you really have left?
Hey, are you okay?
The old facilities man asked me.
You're kind of just standing here, kid.
Oh, yes, I murmured back. I forgot my ID. Could you scan me up? Back in my room, it smells like it's been visited by mysterious lovers. I try to talk to them, but they switch faster than anything. The days have melted into weeks lately, and each time it seems to be the same drill, the same long talks and promises of grandeur romance that all end with the same late-night desperate text that reveals all that the intent was from the get-go and ends up with their hungry, drooling coyote faces on my door hours past midnight. It was often the skinwalker that visited me. It seemed to get jealous when it noticed the lingering cologne of others. It gets upset and it asks me for details. It gets even angrier when I can't recall them. Half the time, I don't even remember. Half the time, I am convinced I was half asleep. And when I actually am, I wake up in the strangest of places. Weeks after waking up on the tracks, I found myself waking up in the empty elevator lobby of my floor. After the fourth time, with disheveled hair and bleary eyes, I set up a camera in the corner of my room and had the deepest sleep of my life. In the morning, with another fresh cup of increasingly bitter tar coffee, I watched the video. There I was, wrapped in a cocoon of white sheets, blissful and unaware. I would toss and turn occasionally, a foot out of the blanket, an arm off the bed. But mostly, I was intact. Then, in one of the dark corners of the room, something stirred. My sleeping self paid it no heed. Like a martyr, I rose from death, not on my legs, not by myself. I saw myself hover 3 feet in the air like a rag doll, a puppet with invisible strings being pulled. The edges of my toes grazed the carpet floor, bouncing, stuttering, and then gliding. The door to my room opened itself as something unseen carried me out. It stood open for an hour until I walked back, pulled the sheets over my head, and was fast asleep again. I shut the laptop and looked at the perfectly normal corner, the intersection of 2 walls, one of the bones of the building, staring back as innocent as a child. Oh God, what is happening to me? Outside, the world moved on indifferently. The trees changed colors to red and yellow and orange, bowing to a wind that had a sharper bite to it. The buses continued to skip stops, and the squirrels got fatter. My peers attended the football games with raucous cheers and drunken stupors. Meanwhile, I sat in my dorm like a shriveled-up mummy, holding my knees each night, trying to rock myself to sleep. The skinwalker Jake would regularly drop in with little tokens and unpredictable gifts, craving my affection. They came in the form of colorful, vibe-cleansing gemstones and old tarot cards pickpocketed from curated thrift shops and antique stores. His remnants in my room grew in substantial piles of sock fuzz, belly button lint, hairballs, and skin flakes. I would find myself watching each strand, each particle of dust accumulate for hours on the dirty white carpet of my room. Watch it all hover in the spears of broken sunlight coming from the blinds of my window. Watch it all as I sit here, growing so old. On some nights, I see this little cockroach scurrying across the door of my bathroom. Every time I walk in to take a look at myself in the yellowing mirrors, I see it run in panic, in terror, disappearing in nasty corners as I kick and stomp in futility. The longer I stare at myself, me with my long hair and puffy eyes, the more I start to see what the little cockroach would see me as. I begin to see the world as it does. Sometimes I am it, with my antenna and thorax and forelegs. I am reduced to a helpless scurry of circles and fear. My body is looking wrong. I wonder what Mother would say if she were not dead herself. There was a time when little me was carried to a carnival on Mother's bony shoulders. Blobs of lights, red and green and shimmering yellow, danced past me in a dizzying rush. Surrounded by a sea of smiling faces, I rose above it all as Mother waded me through. People with animal-shaped heads blew fire from their mouths in long torrents, dazzling other kids, like me, who watched with fervent squeals. We stopped at food stalls and devoured hot dogs and popcorn. We slurped cola in gluttonous frenzies, competing with each other on who could burp the loudest. On the Ferris wheel, she pretended that we were on top of the world, just me and her, floating in a little box in outer space. Our own time capsule, our own spaceship. When the firecrackers went off, she told me they were nebulas. I asked Mother, with dove eyes, if I would ever be as beautiful as she was. Red and blue firecracker light glistened on her skin as she turned to me. Her dark eyes melted in a whirlpool of warm crinkles, and her sunken cheeks peeled back to a large smile. In the lucidity of that moment, she was most herself. "One day, my little one, you will be just like me. You will be me," she said, "but better in every way. You will be the spring that brings cherry trees to life. Nobody matters like you do. You will be here for so long, so blessedly. I have loved you as such. And one day, my grave will be punished by angels, but you will sing with them." I began to shed tears as I clawed at her, telling her I did not want her to go away, that I am so scared of being alone. "Oh, I'll be around," she promised. "No one's ever going to hurt you, love." In so many ways, my mother was my first love. In so many ways, Mother was also a liar. After we returned home, Mother tore her clothes off as she ran dry-heaving into the bathroom. She took 2 long, fingerless nails, inserted them deep inside her mouth, and buried her head in the toilet again, retching and quivering. At night, when the voices of her and her friends filled the skies and pressed against the glass window of my room, little me, with popcorn dust on her fingers, did the same. In so many ways, I wanted to be Mother. In so many ways, I don't even remember if that's what she really said. Lately, my memories have been leaking out like steam from a pot of boiling water. My face feels unfamiliar to my own self, and my clothes feel like they have been worn by someone else. They reek of dead meat, looser than they have ever been before. Even the silence isn't the same anymore. It roars in my ears like the reverberating bass of a heavy truck, pure and loud. The skinwalker Jake had changed too. His touch on my skin was softer than a whisper, and the words he did whisper in my ear were now a little truer. He even stayed after a little longer. Last time, he said, "You should come to my room in South Case, room number 334. Just come whenever. My roommate isn't even there. Just come." So I obeyed, as I always do. I climbed the stairs and passed those classrooms until I stood outside his corridor's entry door, waiting because my ID card flashed a burning red. When I peeked through the window, all I saw were offices layered with deep red carpets. I went to the service desk downstairs, and the ever-smiling service desk worker said, "Sorry, but there are no resident rooms on the 3rd floor of South Case Hall." His fake smile grew wider and wider till it was cheek to cheek. Maybe someone is playing a prank. He continued to stare with his cold eyes and a smile that would not stop growing. In my twilight trances, I returned to wander that infinite corridor outside my dorm, as it stretched for miles with every step I took. There are some places where the veil of reality flickers, where time does not work and space is a mirage. Across the passing doors, each marked with a rolled-up sock on the knob, I heard the moans of a woman who sounded exactly like me. It became a habit to steal those socks, my own little collection. At times, I see the guest in my bathroom, the little cockroach, turn into something else, something impossibly larger. I see its shadow block the light leaking out from underneath the bathroom door, hear its guttural croaks flowing in broken pauses. I hear it laughing, coughing, and talking to itself. I often catch myself pressing my ear against the bathroom door, a taste of those maddening murmurs. Sometimes I hear myself in there. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I hear her in there. This time, I heard my name coming from within. "Liz, Liz, Liz." A slithering whisper. "Liz, Liz, Liz." With shaking hands, I reached out to the doorknob, and the door began to creak open. From the top of the door, the cockroach landed on my face. I yelped and slapped myself hard. The cockroach's corpse fluttered to the ground, where it lay quivering on its back. I slowly lowered myself to the ground, staring at that little blob of grimy insect mush, watching until the little legs stopped moving. Something screamed inside the bathroom. A long wail, anguished and inhumane. I sat on the spot with frozen bones, my eyes fixed at the slightly ajar bathroom door, sensing movement in the dark shadows. My heart held its breath in anticipation as the door began to open. I saw a whisper of the white eyes first, vague and translucent in that eternal black, eyes rolling back into a face that slowly, glacially came more and more in focus. The entire world held its breath for her to emerge, and she took her time as such. The hallway was no longer filled with echoes of laughter, and even the heavy, buzzing silence in my head stopped its singing. Next, I saw the feet, pale and dirty, hovering a meter above the ground. She glided in that smooth motion, her stiff arms sticking out slightly to the sides, and her hair floating around her head, devoid of gravity. But the mouth was the worst. It was open and hollow, her jaw large enough to fit another skull in it. She was me, but dead. She floated past me to the corridor outside, and all I could do was follow in a mind-numbing trance. I needed to see what she was up to. I turned and bent in the corridor, and she was gone. From underneath the trash compactor door, a sliver of light turned on. I stepped inside the grungy room that reeked of stale cardboard and discarded rotting foods. The wafer-thin metal door to the garbage chute rattled slightly. I watched it dance, mesmerized by its beauty, as it opened slightly to emanate a cold breeze, and then gently, lovingly, shut back. From inside, carried on the crests of the cool, putrid wind, came the echoing laughter of a child. Somehow, standing in that strange, otherworldly room, some younger version of me, some memory, lurked out of sight in that dark garbage chute. I had to help her. I opened the metal chute door and poked my head in to look down. In the dark, I saw those white eyes again, helpless and begging and dead. I reached out with a hand to help. Sharp daggers ripped apart the flesh on my arm, 1,000 syringes sliding across my skin to unravel me. Screaming, I jumped back into the main corridor as black, warm lines of blood raced down my sleeve. My vision blurred, and everything spun as I sprinted down the corridor and into someone's arms. "Hey, are you... Oh my God, what happened?" the resident assistant asked. Do you have any bandages?" "Yes, I do, but what?" I cut myself shaving. The lie fell out of my mouth automatically. Would you like to come to my room?" the RA asked. I nodded as she led me to a dorm very different from mine. It looked like a place that was well lived in. There were sun sign posters on each of the walls, a fluffy carpet on the floor, and green plants snaking the windowsill. On the desk was a bell jar full of petunias and moss and lichens. "My boyfriend got me that terrarium," the RA said, moony-eyed, handing me gauze and band-aids. "Your room is so pretty." "Thank you. I put a lot of work into it." "Why do you have a telephone there?" I asked, pointing at a cream-colored dial-up telephone. "Oh, all RA rooms have that, but those things don't work anymore. Now we just use a flip phone. That thing is literally so old. They used it decades ago. It just has a dead line. Try it." I put the cold phone against my ear, but all that spoke back was the dead, endless hum. Why do they keep them if they don't work? The RA shrugged. "Beats me, girl. Nostalgia, tradition, memory, I guess." "Does that feel better?" she added, pointing at my gauze-covered arm. "Not really. Not that much. I think I just panicked. Sorry." I said, sorry for wasting her time. Sorry for being there. "You're all good. It wasn't that much blood, but technically I'm not supposed to give you medical stuff. But honestly, it's such a silly rule. I don't end up following half of it sometimes. Plus, going to the hospital isn't the best thing to do for us broke college kids, right?" I cracked a weak smile at that. She was trying her best to be nice to me. "Your bed looks comfortable," I said, pointing at the memory foam-drenched mattress, stacked with pillows and plushies. "You're so sweet." I've always hated how shitty the dorm mattresses are, so I had to make it feel a bit more like home. "I just have one pillow," I said stupidly. She raised an eyebrow. "Well, does it help you sleep well enough?" "I don't think I have slept in a long time," I confessed, looking her in the eye, meaning it. Maybe some part of me really did need to be saved, to be found by someone. The RA chuckled.
It's gonna get a lot worse. This is just the beginning. I mean, the amount of all-nighters I've pulled for my calc classes. Have you tried melatonin? I had a flashback of emptying a bottle of melatonin gummies in my mouth, a memory I don't even remember having. I nodded. Didn't work at all. You should definitely go to Olin. Make use of your free visits, you know? But if all else fails and you totally didn't hear this from me, but maybe throw in a glass of wine with some weed gummies. And I am definitely not to offer you any of that, but for the right price. She winked. I could do something for you. My rates are cheap. You don't look like you have a lot of friends, do you? Every year I have weirdos like you showing up. Lonely, creepy weirdos. You're so pathetic. I blinked at her. And the thing about Olin that most people don't know is that they have 3 whole free visits per semester. The RA continued talking at me. There are definitely more resources I can provide. A thunderous crash somewhere outside made us both bolt up. Stay right here, the RA ordered, her tone suddenly brisk. I'll be right back. Make yourself at home, okay? The familiarity, the warmth of the room left with her as she slammed the door behind. Suddenly, the room felt a lot smaller, and I was now a little rat, wandering in my new surroundings, twinging and jumping at every little sound, scared I'd get snatched by something large and feathery up in the sky. I hovered over the RA's desk, scanning the little bits of her life scattered all over. Multicolored pens and recycled paper notepads and sticky notes filled with gibberish words I could not read. Over the desk hung a board filled with hundreds of Polaroids. Smiling faces, happy faces. She had a life. A tiny smile broke out across my face. She has a life, I told myself, picturing a story for each face. Boyfriend, friends, siblings, pet, father, and then the telephone rang. A shrill shriek that grew louder and louder, beckoning me towards it. With trembling hands, I reached out and put the receiver to my ear. In that fuzzy static, I heard whispers, murmurs of meaningless words. Hello? I asked, my voice croaky and dry. Who's there? Words and phrases began to jump at me. It's me. From the inside of the dead telephone, Mother's voice spoke in my ear, as real as her lips inches away. My grip tightened on the receiver, threatening to sink into that hard plastic and break it into a million pieces. My heart. In that shock, I felt relief. Sweeping, large hands of comfort erupted from the wall and pulled me in a tight hug. Tears cascaded down my face as I wept and said, I've really missed you, Ma. How are you? I am really good, Mother said, her voice bright and chirpy. Is everything all right, Doctor? It's quite late. We were almost headed to bed. Yes, of course. I have been sleeping fine. So is she. I blinked back hot tears and looked up to see Mother mirroring me. She leaned against the wall with the telephone receiver pressed against her ear. Her golden hair was wrapped in a messy top bun, and lilac flowers bloomed on her nightie. Hold on, sir, I need to write this down. I watched as she went to the RA's desk to pick up a pen and a recycled paper notepad. Yes, I am back. Could you please repeat that? You were talking about prions something? Uh-huh. Disease, Mother murmured, furiously scribbling. Slow down, please. PRNP gene mutation. I don't understand what that means. You said the condition is called FFI? Her scribbling stopped as her hand went limp around her waist, and the pad fluttered to the ground. I watched her nervously lick her lips as a deep frown buried itself between her brows. No, but the insomnia, she began, but stopped. I watched as her chest began to heave faster,
her other hand creeping up to the receiver to hold on for dear life.
"What do you mean by autosomal dominant?" Her voice rang loudly in the empty room, and I shrank back a little way, shrank down a little way. "No, you're mistaken. Fatal? They must have messed something up at the lab. It's just insomnia, please." Mother's head bowed down to Destiny, and I watched as she shivered, puddles of tears forming near her feet. "No, please!" she screamed, and suddenly, once more, I was little me from 1,000,000,000 years ago, hiding in dark shadows, an eye in a door that stood ajar. "Not her, please! She's been such a good girl! Not her! Not my daughter! Not my—" Her head whipped up violently as she looked at me. I stared back at the tangled hair, the snot-stricken face, and heaving chest into the red eyes of the deranged woman I once called my mother. I stood snared on the spot as she ran at me. I blinked to find myself left into a heaping mess in the corner of the room. My numb arm held out the telephone receiver in hand that spoke only a dead tone, and amidst that hum, a voice croaked out, "What I am, you will become." The phone went silent once more, and I began screaming. The RA and some other students out in the hall heard me and found me catatonic, mumbling nonsensical things that I don't quite remember saying. I am sure they must be lying to me. The RA recommended that I go to the counseling and psychiatric services sometime for a checkup. "Sounds like you need to be locked up, girlie," the RA said. One of my floor mates asked, "Hey, who is that strange lady staring down your room's keyhole the other day? She's there all the time." "Haven't you heard of the witch that haunts this dormitory?" Yes, I heard she lives in the labyrinth of underground steam tunnels that run underneath the entire campus," someone else added. "Living tunnels that move and change and groan and croak. I have heard the voices down there." "And I don't know what to tell them," I said to Jake, holding him, entwined together on my bed like old tree roots. "Maybe," he nodded thoughtfully, rubbing his scraggly beard. "Maybe you're haunted, you know? I mean, I hear shit like this all the time. Campus has had tons of students dying around in these old-ass buildings. Like someone died in Wonders Hall basement a couple decades ago. Dude accidentally got himself locked in some sort of refrigerator and froze to death. They even suspect he was in a death cult because some guy from his church also cut his own throat out or something like that." Jake sat up to pull the blanket up to his chest. "Some of my friends in freshman year lived there, and they'd see like these weird-ass floating orbs in the hall sometimes. I used to try to laugh it all off, but then I tried using the gym in the basement in Wonders late at night, and I swear, I've seen some shit out of the corner of my eye too. Like figures, just standing in the middle of the hall, and you blink and they're gone. Random hot and cold spots. You've seen those corridors, right? I mean, Wonders is literally the building right over. You must have. Always feels like someone is walking behind you, your neck hair standing up, telling you that something is off, and then you turn around and nothing." I watched his eyes very closely. They were so far off. My papa used to say something about ghosts and stuff. He said that the human soul needs fulfilled purpose to truly move on. Like an old person dying meant that only the past died, but someone who had a whole life in front of them dying meant that a whole future withered with them. And that leaves imprints on other people's lives, you know? His cold grip on my hands tightened as I hung on to every word he said. "Echoes of sorts," Jake continued. Papa said that these ghosts are trapped spirits, and they're attracted to people in pain. He finally looked at me. I think they feel like you're one of them. Unfinished purpose, I muttered to myself as he pulled me in tighter, and we nestled in each other's warmth. For the first time ever, he asked, "Can I spend the night?" "Of course," I said as a tingling warmth sparked in my chest. Before I knew it, his snores were filling the room. Meanwhile, I remained staring at that corner of the room, thinking and thinking and thinking. I haven't been myself lately. I've been sleeping less, sleeping in fractions that keep thinning with the distance between them increasing. Every moment I live is spent trying to desperately grapple onto the next one, like I have become an outsider to my own life. You don't exist in anyone's memories. You are forgotten. You were never really here. But sometimes it is nice to be forgotten. It's quieter. Lights aren't as blinding. Outside my door, the distant laughter, the joyful music receded like a train I was chasing after. I haven't been myself lately. I wonder what Mother would say about that if she were not dead herself. In my last days, in that creaking large house, little me met someone who only looked like Mother. I woke up that night, parched and scared of the noises coming from the backyard. With a drumming heart, I shuffled down the stairs, a step at a time, to peek through the netted door. Mother stood there, staring at the sky. I quietly, cautiously approached, shivering in the autumn cold. She seemed to be talking to herself.
Mustn't let them get past. Couldn't, wouldn't, shouldn't. Liars! Their place will be in the fiery lake of burning sulfur. This is the second death.
Ma? I whispered, but her eyes did not find me.
Unzaba Nur will rise. Must worship. Can't let hurt. She can't die like this. Can't take her like this. No! Won't! No! Ma, you're scaring me,
little me said. She looked at me, her face blank, eyes completely black.
No, Narcissa, I told you. I have done enough. It's not working. It's not working. Anzabonur just takes and he consumes it all in his heavenly fire. His divine presence burns my skin, Narcissa. Ma!
I yelled. She stopped talking and tilted her head, evaluating me. Now, who are you? Your tricks won't work on me, Anzabonur. God himself will kill tens of thousands if it pleases him. This plane is not yours. This world must remain untouched from your evil, she spat, pulling a thin dagger out of nowhere. I can't worship you if you won't let me love. She slashed the air where I stood a second ago, but I was already running back to the house. As the door slammed behind me, her voice came drifting into the house, like mist on a moor.
And he smote the men of Bethshemesh because they looked into the ark of the Lord, and even he smote of the people 50,000 and 70 men.
I hid underneath the oak dining table and watched her feet shuffle slowly into the house, each limb twisting itself into place. With me, the entire house held its breath. There was a silence that lasted, and my tiny heart pounded in my frail chest as I saw her get down to all fours. Her maddening face appeared in front of me, so foreign. So strange. Who was she? She smiled a toothless smile and said,
He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away." She extended an emaciated arm, and there it stood, lingering, quivering like a leaf in autumn wind. "It's me," her eyes promised me. Little me reached out for the hand. And then I saw what she did. In that moment, I knew there was nothing but it. An evolutionary, paralyzing dread submerged me. It laid underneath the skin of the world, buried alive in a time before time. It never knew what to become, so it became 12,000 things all at once, thriving and reveling in poverty and old sin. Its poisonous lull, an addiction, entrapped me for a singular second. But in that moment, little me experienced the tendrils of a being, of black chaos, of unholy form and void, filled with hatefulness and spite. A behemothik, unutterable evil that knew what was to become of me. It suspended me in a limbo and tore apart my brain with a thought of undoing, a thought it knew would hurt most. My mother loved it, worshipped it, with all of her lecherous heart and fading mortality, loved it more than she loved me. She was lost to it. It had her. I couldn't understand what it meant then. The whole time I knew that screaming and crying was all I could do. In my last memory of her, Mother had towered over me. Her skeletal face was lit partially by the flashing blue and red lights of the cop car that parked itself outside her house. She looked at me and said, "You don't know it yet, but I have already killed you." In the morning, my beloved was gone, and the other side of paradise, of my bed, was left cold. I laid there, as still as moon dust on the dark side of the moon, staring at those folds and crevices on the bedsheets in the rosy morning light, the wonderful proof that he had once lain there with me. I laid there staring until weeks flew by and mounds of the December snow piled up against my window. They had taken her away after that night, and one day when I was in foster care, they said she died. But if she really did, why do I see her in the corner of my room, sticking, spread-eagled on the ceiling, splattered like a spider, with me as a fly in her net, her web of dreams? Why do I see her in my classroom, a stranger, right next to my psychology professor, who said, "What the critical mind deems as hallucination or dream, the more credulous believes to be a true manifestation or emergence of a greater reality." Maybe you've been dreaming all along. Maybe you died a long time ago, killed by her, and all of yourself is just now coming to terms with it. Maybe she hurts you because she needs to tell you something. It's why I hear her knocking on my door every time when I am in my bed at the precipice of sleep, that murky boundary of dreams and reality. I feel her getting angrier, more frustrated at my ignorance. Why can't I just understand? Maybe I've been stuck in limbo, a nightmare of sorts, and she is my sleep paralysis demon. I let her go a long time ago. She just hasn't let go of me yet. Lying in that puddle of grief, I had the strangest dream. My beloved, my Jake, led me by my hand to a party in a big blue house. The air inside had a hazy drunkenness to its feel, its scent laced with memories of a good, careless time that I had never experienced, only imagined. We squeezed past drunk, sweaty people, dressed in funky Halloween outfits, and dancing to the electronic dance music the towering DJ was playing.
We pushed and squeezed some more till the cold autumn air of the backyard washed us anew. There stood bands of people, smoking joints and having murmured conversations that I could not comprehend. Jake introduced me to two girls whose faces were blurs of color, but they had blonde and brown hair. "Is she ready?" the blonde asked Jake. "Yeah, she is," he said. "I am," I told her.
"It's the best fucking high you'll ever get," the brunette said. "There's nothing like it." "Okay, let's do it then." The blonde pulled out a canister of gasoline and began to douse herself. "Here, you go next." The brunette went on, and when it was Jake's turn, he did the same and said, "You're gonna feel so good, babe. Death by fire is the purest death." I began to pour the cold liquid, feeling it drench me to my bones. Blondie pulled out a lighter and flicked it on. "This is gonna be so much fun." Jake slipped his wet hand in mine, and then it was all flames. The white heat spread over my body, burning me, making me and unmaking me, and then remaking me. I was the corpse of a cloud that crumbled to the cement, surrounded by nothing but hot ash and smoke. Maybe I was no longer dreaming. In that immobile state, I felt it before I heard it. To compare it to anything earthly would not be a righteous comparison at all. But for me, it hissed, and I knew, in that moment, it chose to be a snake, a colossal python of dazzling golden scales. It slithered slowly near my feet, letting its forked red tongue glide all over my body, tasting me, my fear, my life. Then it unhinged its jaw and swallowed me whole. I was tossed and turned, constricted into a warm, slimy, ever-moving tube, suffocating, trying to overcome the paralysis in vain. The tube writhed more, its powerful muscles carrying me to my final destination. And suddenly, I fell into an opening, and I no longer needed to breathe. Stiff as a board, with me on my back and my hands on my side, I heard it speak to me.
"Morality without action is just vanity."
The voice was deep and seductive, like a lover's reassurance. There was no source to its sound. It was everywhere and nowhere, but I heard it as loudly as if the python was wrapped around my own brain.
"From my days in Delphi as her oracle to my Akashvanis announcing the fate of King Kansa and Mathura, I have heard it all. I have seen what you think of one another. You humans harbor such hate for each other, the kind I could not even dream of."
Its presence circled around me, toying, a predatory inheritance.
"Do you wish to know what they think of you?"
The snake murmured.
"I know it is what you want, and I relish in providing."
In the darkness of the pit, the void I was suspended in, gray smoke condensed around me into a ring of figures that gradually grew into familiarity. Some kids from my dorm floor, some from my classes, some that I had passed by at the dining halls, and some that I had seen on the buses. Then there was that RA, that smiling guy who worked the front desk, the old man from facilities, drooling Lewis, and my professors. They stood around me, staring blankly, like I wasn't even there. And then it descended in its serpentine grace, coiling around the crowd until its giant head loomed above us all. It licked its lipless mouth and said,
I know you have wondered what they think of you. You have craved their attention, their validation, as if you couldn't be if they weren't there to acknowledge your existence. But darling girl, they have never thought of you.
Slowly, the crowd around me began to fade, leaving only 2 shadowy figures at the edge of my vision. I think I knew who they were.
You weren't even a thought's worth to them, receding to the background, fading from memory, the moment you were out of sight, as they continued in their busy, busy lives.
I continued to lay there, frozen, staring at the pitch-black darkness.
I sense that upsets you. Your need for attention begs for it not to be true. Your precious little sense of self-importance. But how are you any different in your apathy? Your wonderful ignorance? Are you, too, not guilty of thinking of people only on convenience? How about that boyfriend of yours you claim to have grown to love?
One of the remaining figures stepped forward into my vision. A cold shudder erupted over my body, goose pimples sprouting on my skin like flowers in the spring. How many days have passed since I last thought of Jake?
Allow me to tell you what happened to him some days ago.
The serpent continued in a soft voice, a delicious growl.
He fell in the Red Cedar River and died. Died a painful, suffocating death as the freezing water burnt his lungs. His body was already bloating, putrefying in the currents, and his eyeballs were being eaten by fish before anyone in the universe had a thought about it. His last thoughts were as muddled and confused as the sediment he sank in. He was so afraid, so alone. But they will not find him for many, many months. And when they do, he will look nothing like the little boy his mother had raised and loved all those years. Nobody cares about drunk little sad boys walking alone in the cold.
I could not move, but the tears rolled freely from my eyes. Sometimes it is in our dreams that our deepest fears are realized and made to be true. And sometimes it's the other way around, and we recognize it to be true, because deep down we feared it so.
You weep not out of sorrow, but from guilt,
the snake hissed.
Yet there are people who are out there. They're out there looking for him. Here you are, blissfully unaware, unashamed. You aren't out there. Now, he has known death sooner than you have. You are a bad person to not think of him more.
The gray figure of Jake smiled at me. In hell, you can witness the future and the past, but you can never experience the present. So you're always out of touch. Isn't it so strange that we're all so out of touch? Aren't we? Then he disappeared. Forever. I wish I could tell him I will miss him so much. The serpent's presence coiled around me, bringing the laugh-smoke figure closer. I knew who it was. She's been biding her time. She can wait a little more.
But your apathy is consistent with yourself too, isn't it?
The serpent asked.
Maybe it is time you admit the truth. I know that you feel it. It gnaws on your bones from within. It burrows deep inside your mind. Go on, child. it into existence.
For the first time in what felt like eons, agency returned to me, and my lips moved, trembled, to say, I wish I wasn't so lonely. Then there was only silence. The words sank in, burying in my flesh as if I carved them in my wrist with a blade myself. A satisfactory laughter erupted around me, like the very earth was holding her belly, shaking in mirth. The ground rumbled and I could move again. I stood up and looked around, staring at the long lines of chattering, drunken people outside the bars. A pair of blonde girls in crop tops, freezing outside Rick's American Cafe, offered little gin shooters to the frat guy with the shorts and backwards cap. Down the street, a trio of friends jaywalked across the street with greasy cottage inn pizza slices in hand, laughing animatedly. Across the road, on a park bench, sat a couple cozied up, watching, smiling, caressing, kissing. Everyone was so glad to be there.
Do you feel the burden of all the lives you never got to live?
The serpent asked.
It is the heavy weight of living, of knowing that in all of eternity, you are doomed to just one life, one brain, one story.
The girls in the crop tops disappeared behind a door that briefly emanated colorful neon lights and music and cheering. Ghosts of a good time.
You wish you were with them out there. You could have been anyone. Yet all you are is a silly, scared little girl.
Please, I begged. What is wrong with me? What is happening to me? For the first time, the serpent had nothing to say. The girls, the crowd, the streets dissolved into the endless blackness once again. Once again, I was alone. After a long silence, the snake finally said,
Maybe it is time then.
Afar in the distance, a light began to radiate, and from that, she stepped in. My mother, my mom, my ma. The way she looked when the days were full of sunshine, before her hair was wispy, or her teeth were broken, or her nails ripped off, before she danced with mystery strangers in the backyard, before she stopped sleeping. She was so lovely, and how much my heart missed her. My beautiful baby, she said, her eyes tearing up, looking at me like I was the only thing that mattered. She spread out her arms. Won't you give me a hug, Liz? I stepped forward into the comfort of her hug, and then she sat down, pushing me down to the floor with her. How about a story, my dear? Would you like that? Yes, Mummy, I said. Well then, get comfortable, she said. And so, I climbed into her lap, and as quick as instinct, she began to play with my hair. Her fingertips were tiny spiders, dancing on my skull. You're much too big to sit on my lap, baby. I know, Mama. It's okay. I'll allow it, Mother said, winking in secret. Are you comfortable? Would you like me to start with the tail, little one? I nodded, looking up to her in eternal reverence. It began on the night of your birth, you see, Mother said. The sunset that evening was of fire and blood, the whole sky splattered in crimson clouds. And when night fell, there was a lunar eclipse so rare it happens only once a millennia. Her hands moved to the back of my neck, massaging in gentle pulses. I watched the moon get eaten away by a dark shadow, like that plum you swallowed whole when you were younger. I bet the seed still sits in your stomach, you naughty girl. But anyway, one fine day, a little creature of great mischief was born. This creature, though, was someone immortal. Considering you and me, some might even say that it was inevitable. Mother sighed and shifted my weight, her hands rubbing the side of my neck. It decided to go sit in our brain, and once it was comfortable, it started to eat. Num 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 num, she gestured, poking me in the belly as I chuckled. It ate till its belly was full, and then it split itself into its friends and ate some more. It ate our brains, sucking out our dreams, and sleep like delicious marrow in the bone. But where did this tiny thing come from, Ma? Do you really wish to know that, little one? Where from, Ma? I asked. From me, silly, she said, her hands around my throat, pressing down. I gave it to you. I giggled at the whimsical idea of Mother being composed of minuscule living things, insects that we'd share among ourselves, that crawl over my skin and into me. But Mother's hands did not move, and she leaned in, throwing her weight into it, choking me. Ma, you're hurting me, I gasped, trying to wriggle out. Her eyes were glassy once again, her hair hanging over me, tickling my nose. It's okay, baby. Hush, hush. I'm only taking a life that is already over. Please wake me up. Please, I begged to myself, to whatever part of my soul that was still intact, that was still listening. Wake me up! I woke up in my bed, in my dorm, voices echoing in my head like someone just screamed in my ear. My heart pounded, threatening to tear out of my chest, hot blood gushing in my veins like a dam unleashed. Forget about it, I told myself. Wash the sorrow from your skin and move on. It was a dream. Dreams don't hurt. Outside, a cold wind carrying flecks of snow in its sweeping arms raged in the midnight. Through my window, all of heaven and earth slept under a soft quilt of everlasting whiteness. Little diamonds, ice crystals, glittered in the dark. I watched with a mouth slightly ajar, a childhood fascination. I opened the window, removed the screen, and let the winter greet me. The flakes, cold and cruel at first, rested on my skin and began to change, began to melt. Eventually, I dragged myself to the mirror to rub the sleep off my eyes. Dreams don't hurt, I reminded myself. They're all smoke and mirrors. In my reflection, I was the same as I had ever looked. My eyes calm and rested, my skin sagging down my cheekbones, shrunken and shriveled. My hair floated around like wisps of cotton, and right where they ended, there were long, purple marks burnt on my throat. It's okay. I'll never fight for your life again, I told myself, walking back to the window. From the corner of my eye, there was movement. She sat in the corner of the room, her nest. Mother strolled forward and stepped into the light. You know, she began, daughters are so much more than their mother's mistakes. You are so much more than what I was, better than my flaws. I stood there, shivering in the cold with grieving eyes that could not stop weeping. Mom, I'm so scared, I said, bowing down, the tears burning across my face. She tilted her head in sadness and reached out to lift my chin. I know.
Now you know how I felt. I wish I could have helped you. You were just a child. It's okay. What you did was enough. There was no way to stop it, was there? Is that why you hurt me? She shook her head, and just like me, her eyes were weeping too. I could never hurt you, but I did everything I could do to fix it. Everything humanely or even inhumanely possible. Nothing changed, my love. No medicines, no prayers or pleadings worked. No animal sacrifices, no rituals, no trades of my own soul with dark gods could change what was inevitable. And what was inevitable? I asked, knowing what she meant, understanding her at last. This, she said, and then she pushed me out of the window. My body hung there in the moment, in the frigid air, stretched like an arc. When you're falling through the sky, it ends sooner than you think. Life ends sooner than you think. Bones crunched and hot blood splashed across the cold snow, covering me in curls of mist and steam. I dragged what remained of my mangled body forward into the snow, thinking about how people live their whole lives, not even making peace with their lives, let alone their deaths. I am going away for a long time. And I am coming with, Mother said, appearing behind me. Hold my hand, little one. We walked until my legs gave away. The train rumbled somewhere far off, and above me, the red light of the power plant gently glowed. Like two lighthouses in the ocean, I murmured to myself. Here is fine, she said as I sank into the snow, cozying up. Rest your head here, she added, molding flakes into the shape of a pillow. I'm cold, I said. Don't worry, it's bedtime. She pulled a sheet of snow over me, a blanket. It's okay. Sleep is just a few seconds away. You'll be asleep in no time. Snow whispered past my face, a careless caress. I love you, Mom, I said. She simply smiled at that. I love you too. Good night, little one. I smiled back and turned to my side, pulling the blanket over my head. Leaving this world isn't as scary as it sounds. The end.